Hello everyone, this is Pooka and welcome to the finals of the Greenwood, Indiana City Championship, day 2 of the Indianapolis Mini City Marathon. In this finals matchup, we have Scott Lawler, a player from Indiana on the left, who we just saw won his top 4 match against Stephen Clark, and he's going to be facing off against Colin a player from the Chicago area, who drove all the way out to Indiana for this event, and this should be a good matchup here. Both of these guys, I don't believe they have too much of a resume when it comes to Pokemon. They're both solid players from what I've seen so far. I've had a chance to play with Colin a few times. Pretty good player. Scott, I have not had a chance to play against him, but from what I could see in the top 4 match, he knows what he's doing. And obviously he's here in the finals, so we should have a great matchup here between these two guys. And they shake hands, wish each other good luck, and we start off here in the finals here. And we'll see who takes home the title of City Champion, 50 championship points, and, half a box of cards, and a nice spiffy looking trophy. That's what you get for first place here. Now, Scott, he's going to be using the deck he used in the last round, obviously. You can't change decks between rounds, which is his Tornadus EX, Aspertia City Gym Ho-Oh deck. Runs some other attackers as well, but those are the main focuses of the deck. Now, it does not look like he had a very good start. Doesn't look like he has any supporters. He just played a water and the Aspertia City Gym and then passed. That's not really what you want to do. And Colin will be playing a deck that a lot of people really don't like, but it's here, and you got to deal with it. Which is the Hammer Time deck. It runs Sableye, Darkrai, Crushing Hammer, Enhanced Hammer, and just tries to remove energy. You can just junk hunt for your Crushing Hammers and stuff like that, and that's exactly what he does here. Maybe I would have liked to see Colin just go for a Confuse Ray at this point. Getting back one Crushing Hammer isn't the greatest thing, and maybe if Scott doesn't have any additional Pokemon, he could just Confuse him, and you're probably going to need to get 10 extra damage on there anyway, because of the Aspertia City Gym. It gives Tornadus EX 190 hit points. So I would have liked to just see him do 10 damage there, but he decided to Junk Hunt instead for the Crushing Hammer. He does get a Heads, so that did pay off a little bit. But yeah, at some point, 2 Night Spheres will do 180 damage, which leaves the Tornadus with 10 left. So you're going to need to do a third attack at some point to get a knockout on this Tornadus EX. The plus 20 hit points is so big against Darkrai. Just turns all the attacks from, 2-hit knockouts to 3-hit knockouts. So if you can just kind of get that out of the way, do your extra 10 damage that you need to right now, I think that's probably the best bet for you to topple this, 190 hit point monster of a Pokemon. We'll see if he decides to do that this turn or not. But at some point, I would like to see Colin do that. Just because it's going to be so difficult to deal with that Tornadus EX if he doesn't. Now, it looks like Colin did not get much of a good hand here. He does not have an energy, I don't think, which is a problem. So he's got to decide, do I want to Junk Hunt or Confuse Ray? He actually decides to Junk Hunt for a Crushing Hammer once again. Now, Crushing Hammer is very good against the normal, Tornadus, Mewtwo decks that don't run any energy acceleration, but this is a Ho-Oh deck. So that means, sure, you can Crushing Hammer, discard some energy, slow your opponent down, but it's not like the other decks where they just cannot ever attach multiple energy in a turn. If you remove all their energy, they're just going to use Rebirth with Ho-Oh and then get another one out. And they can just keep attacking. You don't really slow them down with Crushing Hammer. Sure, removing an energy is going to be good. There's no denying that. Anytime you can remove an energy, it's going to probably do something. But it's not as devastating against this kind of a deck because they have the Ho-Oh. That's just something to keep in mind. And now this Sableye is going to get knocked out. Colin has no energy in play, and he got his Eviolite's Tool Scrappered, so this is just not a good situation for him right off the bat. It's just looking kind of ugly. This is just kind of a bad situation that you can get into with a Darkrai Sableye deck. You know, if you don't have a Darkrai with at least one energy on it by the time your Sableye gets knocked out, you're going to struggle to get an attack off. You know, in order to get an attack off this turn, he would need, like, well, he needs an energy to attach, he needs 2 dark patches, which means 2 dark in the discard pile, and all sorts of stuff. So he's probably just going to have to sacrifice another Sableye in order to do something here. We do have a computer search from Colin. He's going to grab an enhanced hammer. Now, you actually don't have to show your opponent what you grab with computer search, but looks like Colin's just going to play it anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter that much. I'm not sure what the other card in his hand is. He's got 2 other cards, I guess. I'm not sure what those are. Hopefully one of those is a supporter, otherwise that was kind of a weird play. And yep, there's the enhanced hammer. Now that's actually going to be very big. Removing double colorless energy is a big deal. But it looks like his other supporter was a Skyless, so maybe he would have been better off just using a computer search for a Juniper and then trying to draw some stuff, because at this point he's definitely behind. He does not have a Darkrai ready. If this Sableye gets knocked out next turn, he's going to be in a world of trouble. And that's just kind of the reality of the situation. So he's going to Skyla for the Juniper instead, but then just going to catch her up Terrakion, and then he's going to Junk Hunt here. Now he has a Juniper in his hand, so I think what you would want to do here is just take 2 cards that you know you'll be able to play, because you're going to have to discard your hand no matter what. So I think you take Crushing Hammer. That's a very good card to take, and I think the other card you'd want to take is Eviolite. It looks like Colin is looking at that. You just want to take a card that you know 100% you're going to be able to play from your hand, because you're going to have to discard your hand with that Juniper. He decides to take an Enhanced Hammer. I don't like that one too much, just because there's no guarantee you'll be playing it this turn. Sure, I mean, if your opponent is forced to put down a double colorless, then yeah, he's going to put down one. But knowing that you have the Enhanced Hammer and you have a Juniper in your hand, he doesn't have to put down a double colorless. He can just wait till you Juniper that away, and then you've just kind of wasted one of your cards that you're getting back. So kind of a long rant there, but I guess my point is that if you're going to Junk Hunt there and you have a Juniper in your hand, just take 2 cards that you're absolutely positive that you're going to use. Crushing Hammer's great. I think Eviolite would have been slightly better there. It's not going to be the end of the world, but just something to keep in mind. And now we have a Rebirth coming from Scott. Looks like he got a heads. He only gets 2 energy, but that's fine. He just wanted 1 to use Energy Switch, so he can use Blow Through once again. And again, Colin is just in rough shape here. He loses his Sableye. He has to promote a Darkrai with no energy. He is down 2 prizes at this point. He could get a couple Crushing Hammer heads here. This is where it can be useful, if you can remove a bunch of energy from your opponent's Pokemon after you. After, you know, they have to discard 1 for Power Blast, that's going to be huge. It looks like he decides to remove 1 from the Ho-Oh. I think I would have just preferred removing it both from the Tornadus. You know, might as well just do that. Force him to put down a double colorless if he wants to attach, or wants to attack. You're now leaving him the option to Power Blast you next turn, which is not a good situation to be in when you get Power Blasted for 100 and you don't have the energy even to attack. So I definitely would have liked to see removing the energy off the active, but I could see a situation where he wants to catch out the Ho-Oh and just kind of stick it there, since it has a 2 retreat cost. So maybe he'll end up doing that. But it looks like Colin is just having a rough start here. And this can happen with a Darkrai Sableye deck. You would think this is one of the most consistent decks in the whole format. You know, it's just Darkrai Sableye. But the truth is, you do hit some games where your Sableye gets knocked out quickly. You just don't have the energy for your Darkrai quite yet. You don't draw the Dark Patches quickly enough. And what can happen is this. You just don't get to attack with Darkrai for a while. And when Darkrai isn't fast, it ends up getting overpowered by a lot of stuff. You know, Night Spear is a great attack. 90 and 30. That is incredible. But when it comes down to it, if you give your opponent enough time to set up with, well, let's see, 190 hit point Tornadus EX, a Terrakion that can land crush you for 180 damage, even a Mewtwo that can X-Ball you for a ton of damage, you're probably not going to come out on top, especially when your opponent has Super Scoop Up. So your strategy has to be to just kind of barrage him early on with Night Spears. Maybe the Crushing Hammer strategy isn't as good in this matchup, but we'll see. This probably isn't a matchup that Colin has played out too often. The Ho-Oh deck is not a very widely used deck. People know it exists. People know it's there. But when it comes down to it, it's just not one of those decks that's like, alright, if I show up to a tournament, I have to account for the Ho-Oh deck. It's not like, alright, if I show up to a tournament, I'm going to have to deal with Darkrai. If I'm playing a deck that can't beat Darkrai, I probably shouldn't be playing my deck. In the same way, if I show up to a deck that's all weak to water, I probably shouldn't play that because I know Blastoise Keldeo is going to be there. With Ho-Oh, it's like, yeah, this deck might be here, but it's not something I need to worry about that much. Maybe I'll play it once or twice. But it's not one of the main decks that I have to worry about. And that's kind of the advantage of playing a deck like the one Scott has. It's just kind of, it's a strong deck. It's very good. But it's not one that people test against all the time. And it's also a deck that has a lot of room for variation. Some people don't run Super Scoop Up. Some people don't run the Asparagus City Gym. Some people run all sorts of different cards in their Ho-Oh deck. So it's got all sorts of things going for it. And this is all just makes it very difficult to play against this deck, as we're kind of seeing right now. So we do see Crushing Hammer from Colin, and that's a Tails. He's gone about 50-50 on those so far, I think. Maybe one or two extra Tails. Overall, he hasn't gotten too lucky or too unlucky. There's another Crushing Hammer, and just as I say that, he gets another Tails. But it looks like, once again, the only attack he's been able to use is Junk Hunt. He did end Scott down to 4. He revived for a Sableye. And we'll see what he decides to take back here. Looks like he's just getting 2 Crushing Hammers. And it's almost like he's just giving up on attacking altogether. I know Colin also plays some tech cards in his deck. You do see the Terrakion there. He does play Prism that we've seen already. So he will have plenty of options to work with. But if you don't attack ever, I don't know what your plan is. You're not going to run a Ho-Oh deck out of energy at any point. They can just rebirth and get them back. There's too many cards like Energy Switch. There's switches to get out of the active spot. There's Super Scoop Ups. There's just too many things. You're never going to run this deck out of energy. It's just not really going to happen. And if you're going for a strategy that's to run them out of energy and you really can't do that, then I'm not really sure what you're going for. Maybe there's something I'm not thinking about, but it almost seems like Colin has just kind of stuck in a strategy. This can happen sometimes where you just kind of do the same strategy against every deck, no matter what you're playing. And you don't kind of analyze what's going on. Like, you might just be going for the Crushing Hammer strategy in every matchup. And it might be working for you pretty much every time. But then you run into a deck where that strategy really shouldn't work. And then, you don't realize it until it's too late. Sometimes you just have to switch strategies with your deck. And maybe we're seeing Colin overlook that here. I'm not too sure. But right now it does not look like he's in a very good position. He's down 3 prizes. He's finally getting some Dark Patches here. He did Max Potion his Darkrai, so that's nice. But he flipped a bunch of Tails on Crushing Hammer this turn as well. So things are just not going well for him. If he does draw, if he does have a Dark and an Energy Switch, he could Night Spear this turn, which would be nice. He could start to make a comeback that way. But otherwise, he's just going to have to pass. And it looks like that's what we got here. And it's really in Scott's favor at this point. He's got that Tornadus EX that not only has 4 energy on it, so he doesn't mind losing one to a Power Blast Tails. Or even an Enhanced Hammer won't hurt him that much. But it has 190 hit points. It's going to take 3 hits for Darkrai to knock him out. And even if he does, he'll probably get a Ho-Oh in the discard pile at some point, and then all he has to do is rebirth. When you get this far ahead with the Ho-Oh deck, it's very nice because, sure, Ho-Oh is not a very good attacker. Rainbow Burn is a very mediocre attack. But when you get to this point in the game where you're up 3 prizes, you can afford to trade inefficiently with a Ho-Oh. Just because, I mean, you have the prize lead. It's going to let you do that. And that's kind of what we're going to see here, I think. And this is going to be extremely difficult for Colin to come back. I know he plays Prism, so that might mean that he has Shaman EX. And if that's the case, he could start to Revenge Blast. But at the same time, Revenge Blast doesn't even knock out Tornadus EX. It has 190 hit points. So even if he does 180, it's still 10 short of a knockout. And the strength of Shaman EX coming back is just that it can knock out everything in one hit. So we'll see if that comes into play. And if Colin maybe overlooked that. I'm not sure. To be honest, though, Colin has not drawn very well this game. Obviously, he's given up 4 prizes and he hasn't even attacked. He hasn't done damage yet this game. So this can happen quite a bit. And it looks like he draws a Dark Patch, which is probably not what he wanted. It doesn't even look like he has an energy, so here we go again. The most frequently used attack this game has been Junk Hunt, which is very sad if you're Colin. He's going to grab a Computer Search and something else. And looks like an Energy Switch. So it looks like he is going to be trying to go for that, the big Shaman play at the end. The other problem with the Shaman play is that big fire Pokemon over there, Ho-Oh. If Scott has any more Ho-Ohs in the discard pile, which he doesn't, but he has 2 Ultra Balls. If Scott can just get a Ho-Oh in the discard pile, all he has to do is Rebirth, and Ho-Oh knocks out Shaman in 1 hit. Period. And then the game ends. So, yeah, I'm not sure what Colin's plan is at this point. I guess he doesn't really have much to work with. I mean, he's down 4 prizes. This has just been a really bad game. But I guess he's still trying to figure out a way to win. There's no reason to really concede, I suppose. He's not too worried about time. This game hasn't taken too long. So he's just going to try to play it out. I guess this is kind of a game where he can just kind of feel out what Scott has in his deck. And that was a big super scoop up heads, by the way, to get a Ho-Oh in the discard pile with that Ultra Ball. That was a very big flip, which Scott will use to get another Ho-Oh in the discard pile. So this really just effectively takes away the Shaman option for Colin at this point. But yeah, this could just be a game where Colin uses all the time and maybe just kind of takes a look and says, okay, I realize I've lost, but I'm going to play this game out. It's a best 2 out of 3 series because I want to see just exactly what is in Scott's deck, because I don't really know. There's a lot of weird cards in here that I might not know about. For example, now we know there's 2 Mewtwo in Scott's deck. You know there's a bunch of Super Scoop Ups. You know these Spare City Gyms in there. And looks like Scott will end here, which is an interesting choice. But yeah, this is just going to give Colin an idea of what he's playing against, what he's going to work with. And one of the strengths of the Ho-Oh deck is its unpredictability. And if you can play a full game against it and make Scott use all of his cards in one game, then you know what you're playing against. You know what you're up against. It's no longer unexpected. So this could be what Colin's doing here, and I do like that. This is a strategy that a lot of people don't use very often. Just taking advantage of the fact that the longer the game goes, the more information your opponent has to reveal about his deck, and then the better it is for you in the long run when you're trying to game plan for this sort of thing. So at this point, I have to imagine that Colin has pretty much lost the game. We get a Rebirth here from Scott, which gets him a 3 energy Ho-Oh on the field. And from here is probably going to be game over. There's a Power Blast. Gets ahead so he even keeps the energy on there. And if you're Colin here, your best shot is just going to be to Night Spear this turn, honestly. You need to hit for 90 and 30, probably just to Tornadus EX. And then your best bet is probably, it's either just to power up Darkrai or catch her out a Ho-Oh, knock it out with a Shaman, and then just kind of hope that he doesn't flip heads for Rebirth. Those are your two strategies at this point, like it or not. We'll see what Colin does. It's going to come down, I mean, he's probably going to have to end Scott down to 1 and just kind of pray. That's really what it comes down to at this point. But he's going to play a Juniper, discarding a lot of cards. I'm not sure why he did that instead of using the N. He also has to discard a Prism and an Energy Switch. It looks like a couple Energy Switches, honestly. So that was a very costly Juniper for Colin. And yeah, I just don't know what his plan is at this point anymore. He's going to Ultra Ball, discard Darkrai and Sableye. He doesn't really have many cards left in his deck either. So yeah, this game is pretty much over, I would say. He goes for the Shaman EX, so he does play that. But he also discarded a Darkrai, so I'm not sure what he was thinking doing that. That takes away... I don't know how many Darkrai's he has left in his deck, but... takes away his option to just kind of attack with Darkrai's and maybe come back that way. He also discarded a couple Ns, which would be his way to get a comeback here. Now he puts down the Shaman with a Dark, which is also a really weird play for me, because he has an Energy Switch in his hand, and there we go. Scott just has a catcher. He's going to retreat to Ho-Oh, and we're going to move on to game number 2. Scott Lawler will take a quick 1-game lead in this series. 1 game away from being the city champion here in Greenwood, Indiana. So stay tuned, guys. They're going to get set up for game 2, and we'll skip right to that shortly. Alright, looks like we're getting all set up here for game number 2 of the finals of the Greenwood, Indiana City Championship, where we have Colin Peterick mulliganing there. I can speak English today, don't worry. Yeah, he will mulligan. This will allow Scott to draw an extra card, and Colin will shuffle in and draw a new hand of 7 until he gets a basic Pokemon. So Colin did lose the first game, which will allow him to choose who goes first, which means he will go first, because there is no disadvantage to going first. It's actually a complete advantage to go first. He does have a second mulligan there. Now, an interesting thing to note in this situation is just kind of the psychology of heading into a best 2 out of 3 series when you're down a game. It's very important not to freak out after you lose a game, because when it comes down to it, you're not out of it. All you have to do is win this game and then win the next game, and you win the series. Pretty much anyone who's played the game for a long time has been in the situation where you lost a pretty ugly first game, and now you have to win the next 2 to survive, to win the series. But it's important just to take it 1 game at a time, as Colin does mulligan a 3rd time. It is kind of annoying when you're trying to come back. But yeah, just don't worry about it. Just play it 1 game at a time. You know, even though the first game was really ugly, even if you screw up the first game, even if things don't go your way, even if you got really unlucky the first game, it doesn't matter. That's just 1 game. It's over. Just focus on this game. Use what you learned from the first game about your opponent's deck, and just go from there. Try to just use what you've learned, play it the best you can, and just, you know, focus. Don't lose your focus. Just concentrate on the match at hand, and just pretend, you know, you're playing a normal game against your friend. You know, you're just playtesting, and just kind of play the same way you would as if you were practicing. Sure, tournaments are high-pressure situations. There's a lot on the line, but when it comes down to it, it's just Pokemon. Just play the game. It's nice to get yourself all revved up because it's a competition. You know, you want to be on top. You want to win, and that's good if it can drive you, if it can make you focus. But if it makes you nervous, if it makes you start to do things that you probably shouldn't be doing, you know, if you start to do silly stuff, then I would say just kind of treat it as a normal game. We see an interesting decision from Colin there. I do believe he Junipered away an N, which I don't like. Why? He gave his opponent 3 extra cards from a mulligan. That's the situation where you certainly want to play N. He also decided not to catch out the Mewtwo, which I also would have done probably, because Mewtwo is really not a Pokemon you want to lead off with against a Darkrai deck. Tornadus is much better. It's going to get that 190 hit points from the Aspertia City Gym. And Mewtwo also has a 2 retreat cost. So, I don't know. I question that move, but I'm not sure how much it'll impact things. Doesn't look like Scott's hand is very good. Even after all of those mulligans, all he can do is play an N. He didn't actually play any extra cards, so maybe Colin had a read on him that I didn't know about. Maybe Scott mentioned something like, well, those mulligans didn't even help me, and Colin just decided to Juniper instead. So, objectively, the correct play would have been to end your opponent and put him down to a smaller hand. Put him down to 6 instead of the 9 cards he had in his hand or something like that. But if you know your opponent still has a bad hand, then it's perfectly fine to just Juniper instead. I think reading your opponent doesn't come up too often in Pokemon, but when it does, definitely take advantage of the situation. Looks like Scott does not have anything. He has a decent hand for next turn. Actually, that's a Bianca in his hand. If that were a Juniper, that would be a decent hand for next turn, but does not look very good for him. There's no Stadium in his hand, no double colorless. He's just going to attach and pass. And now the Crushing Hammer Barrage will start from Colin. He's going to discard that Fighting, which is pretty annoying for Scott. But does Colin have anything else in his hand? He's going to at least start to attach to a Darkrai. That's going to be nice. And let's see, does he have any supporters? I can't really tell. Does not look like he has one. So he can decide to junk hunt for a Crushing Hammer and a Revive, or he can Confuse Ray for 10. I might consider the Confuse Ray for 10, as I mentioned in the previous game, just because you'll be putting him in 2-hit knockout range for Night Spear when the Aspertia City Gym comes out. But he decides to junk hunt for Crushing Hammer. He values that much more than putting the 10 damage on the Tornadus, which is fine too. So now Scott has a catcher. Colin decided to bench an extra Darkrai the previous turn, which can be annoying when you just put down an extra Darkrai and then one gets catchered out. It makes it more difficult for you to Night Spear, because now he's going to need a Dark Patch, an Energy, and an Energy Switch in order to use Night Spear this turn. And we saw he didn't play a supporter last turn. And Scott, knowing this, decided not to end him. So this is just going to slow Colin down one more turn. But at the same time, that Crushing Hammer is going to slow Scott down a turn. So kind of a trade-off here. Normally you think of the Hammer Time deck as kind of a speedy one that can Night Spear as quickly as turn 2. Well, turn 1 if you were extremely lucky. You almost had to cheat to get a turn 1 Night Spear in this format. But you would expect this kind of a deck to be able to Night Spear turn 2 a lot of the time, but honestly what happens a lot is they use the first couple turns to just use Crushing Hammers and try to slow you down, and then just kind of build a Darkrai slowly, take away your energy, and then over the course of the game it's going to make it more difficult for you to attach energy because you're going to run out. You spent those attachments early on and then they just got you nothing. As the game goes on, you might miss an energy drop or two just because, those Crushing Hammers. But now Scott, he gets an Ultra Ball, which gets a Ho-Oh EX into the discard pile. That is really big. That'll allow him to Rebirth, because I believe there are 3 different types of energy in his discard pile at this point. So Rebirth will come out in full effect here, and he'll be able to use Rainbow Burn if he wants to. That'll be really nice if you can just knock out the Sableye, hit for 80, and maybe just start to put some pressure onto Colin. I guess that would be his best bet here. Once again, Colin does not have a supporter. He does have Crushing Hammers to work with, I suppose, but he hasn't even played a Dark Patch yet. So maybe Scott's thinking, alright, this guy doesn't even have any way to even Night Spear me next turn. He's going to go for the Rebirth, which is a Tails. And yeah, that's Tails. And I guess he can attach and pass. He could use that N It's that weird point where even though your opponent doesn't have a supporter, you might consider ending him anyway because his board position is actually still better than yours, even though you don't have, or even though he doesn't have a supporter. Just him night spearing you would end up in you losing. So he might decide to play the end here, or he might just pass. Tough decision either way. I mean, if things keep going the way they're going, then Scott's going to be on the losing end, so I might consider using the end there. But we'll see. There's a Crushing Hammer Tails from Colin. Looks like he's going to retreat to his Darkrai. He does have the Energy Switch, so that's very nice. He's going to move that up to Darkrai. Put a third energy on it. And Catcher up Terrakion. He's basically just going to hit the Terrakion now. And force Scott to have another fighting, an energy switch, and another energy. Which seems pretty unlikely when you take into account that Scott has a 2-card hand. It didn't play a supporter the previous turn. But he just drew an energy switch, and uh-oh, heads on Rebirth. And this is where Ho-Oh is dangerous. You never know what to expect next. And this could be devastating for Colin. He could lose his Darkrai. All it takes now is one energy or another energy switch, and he gets land crushed for 180. And geez, how do you come back from that if you're Colin? You don't really have an easy follow-up attack for the following turn. Sure, you could get like an energy switch, and then maybe power up a Terrakion, retaliate for a knockout. Excuse me, but it's really not going to be a good situation for you no matter what. And did Scott, did he whiff? I think he missed everything. Wow. Wow, he missed energy or energy switch. That is unbelievable. I cannot believe he missed all those cards. Colin definitely dodged a bullet here. Now it's just going to be a retaliate for 60 instead of a land crush for a knockout. And that is an incredible swing of events here. Wow. I don't even know how to describe how monumental this whiff is from Scott. I mean, he went from being in a dominant position to now, I only did 60 damage to a Darkrai. I'm going to lose my Terrakion. I lose both my fighting energy in play. How do I recover from this? He's going to play a switch, sending up a Tornadus EX. He's going to try to save his Terrakion at the very least. Maybe he can do that, but even then, it's going to be rough. And all he can do is pass to Colin, who gets a Dark Patch. And this is kind of the fickle relationship between Darkrai and Terrakion. You usually have like one turn for Terrakion to come in and knock out a Darkrai. That's usually all you get. If you hit it, boom, Terrakion takes the advantage. If you miss, Darkrai just Night Spears you and you get knocked out. And it's unfortunate that that's the situation, that's how fragile this sort of a matchup is, but that's the reality of it. It's kind of like the Mewtwo Wars. You have one turn to respond. If you hit it, you're golden. If you don't, you're in a ton of trouble. And that's just kind of the situation here. Now, Scott, he has plenty of options to recover from this sort of a situation. It's not like a normal, just like a Terrakion Mewtwo deck where this is all your energy in play. This is all you got to work with, and now you're down to 0 energy in play. No, he's still got Ho-Oh. He'll still be alright. He can still recover from this, honestly. But it's still going to be tough. And Colin does get the catcher off of his Juniper. He's going to be able to knock out this Terrakion. He'll probably just soften up the other one with this 30 damage. He gets an Eviolite as well, which is very big. And if you're Colin here, you got to be feeling great. I think he's at an advantage at this point. Even though he's only taking one prize, he's getting rid of the biggest threat on the board, which is Terrakion. And I gotta say, things are going well for him. Scott also doesn't have much in his hand. So we'll see what happens here. He draws a double colorless. Oh, he does have an N. I didn't see that earlier. So maybe he'll be okay. But he's still going to have to draw fairly well to pull something off here. He puts the double colorless onto Tornadus. He has a catcher. He might consider using that just to get like a 2-hit knockout for sure on a Darkrai. That way he doesn't force him to draw a Tool Scrapper this turn if he were to get an Energy Switch and then Power Blast. It's an interesting choice. He does decide to go for that. He's going to catch out this Darkrai and then go for the N, I think. So he's going to get 6 cards. Colin will get 5. It's interesting, like, when you knock out a Terrakion with a Darkrai, it feels like such an accomplishment, but you only get to draw 1 prize still. It feels like, I took out the big threat. Alright, we did it. Let me just take my 2 prizes, but, oh, Terrakion's on an EX? What? That was like the scariest Pokemon I've ever seen. How do I only get 1 prize for that? But, yeah, that's just the way it is. That's why Terrakion is so good. Looks like Scott does not draw an Energy Switch, so this is not going well for him this game. He will Ultra Ball away a Ho-Oh and a Switch, just to get another Ho-Oh in the discard pile. Gonna grab another Ho-Oh. He's got another Ultra Ball in his hand, so he could, you know, get a third one in the discard pile, I think. But he'd have to discard a Switch to do that. I don't think he'd want to do that, having discarded one already. So he's just going to blow through for 60 and keep it at that. So here's a Crushing Hammer. Ooh, that would have been a big heads for Colin. Enhanced Hammer would be nice for him at this point. He really does have to be feeling good about his position, honestly. But at the same time, Scott, we do know he plays Super Scoop Up. So anything can happen here. It's not over until it's really over when you're up against a deck with 4 Super Scoop Up and then Ho-Oh. We do see an Energy Switch from Colin, a Max Potion, which is nice. Heals off that 60 damage. And he'll probably use a Juniper here. He's got to revive. He's just going to see, do I want to revive anything? Probably not. No need to put an extra Sableye on your field if you don't have to. And we're going to see a Juniper for 7. See what he gets here. See if there's anything good. He does have a catcher, okay. So I like this play. He's going to take out that Terrakion. And then he'll probably hit Tornadus EX for 30. Because he needs to do that to get a 2-hit knockout with Night Spear. So yeah, things looking great for Colin. He has eliminated the Terrakion threat from Scott's field. There's probably not another Terrakion, I don't think. Most people play about 2 Terrakions in that deck. Maybe there's a third. But with all the other cards in Scott's deck, I don't think there's a third. He puts down another Mewtwo, which is an interesting choice. Going for that instead of Tornadus. You know, Mewtwo is just kind of a sitting duck against Darkrai. Sure, it can do 60 with a double colorless if they have an Eviolite, 80 if you Tool Scrapper it, but at best it's going to 2-hit knockout in a Darkrai, and it's going to get knocked out in 2 hits. So I don't know. I probably just would have gone for another Tornadus. It seems like a safer card to put down. But what do I know? Probably doesn't make a difference either way. So we're going to have this N. Scott will draw 6, Colin will draw 4. Now this game is far from over. Let me clarify that. This game is not over by any means, but Colin is at a clear advantage. He's got a bunch of Darkrai's powered up. He's got an Eviolite on one. He's got the prize lead. He's taken out the Terrakions from Scott. The only thing working against him is Super Scoop Up at this point. And if Scott can hit those, I think he'll be fine. But if Scott does not hit those, he's going to lose. Pretty much all there is to it. He also needs to hit a Tool Scrapper within the next turn to knock out this Darkrai in 2 hits. Otherwise, it's going to be another unfavorable trade for him. He's probably going to Power Blast here for 80. I don't think he has any other choice. Rainbow Burn would only do 60. That's not really worth it. Might as well just go for the Power Blast. Oh, we got an Energy Switch. 2 of them onto a Mewtwo. Interesting choice for sure. And now he's just going to Power Blast. Hits for 80 damage. I guess he's kind of opening up the doors for a Mewtwo knockout next turn. If he gets a double colorless, I guess he could do that. 4 energy on the Mewtwo would allow that. Maybe this will force Colin to... Okay, there's Crushing Hammer. That's going to be a big heads if he gets it. And yes, he actually goes for the double colorless on the Tornadus. I might have just gone for one of the energies on the Mewtwo, because the Mewtwo is the scary thing right now, not the Tornadus. But I don't know. I guess he just decides he doesn't want to get Power Blasted. And he's going to go after the Mewtwo instead. And oh, Scott draws a Tool Scrapper. That's a big card as well. Still, I think Colin is in good shape. He does have 2 Darkrai's fully powered and then another one with 1 energy on it. Terrakion is gone, so we won't see any one-hit knockouts anytime soon. But here are the Super Scoop-Ups in Scott's hand. This is going to be a deciding factor here in this game. Here's Super Scoop-Up number 1. What is it going to be? Heads. Alright, that just removes 120 damage from his board. And up comes Mewtwo. And he does have a catcher, so he can catcher out the bench Darkrai. He can attach an energy and then X-Ball for 100, getting a knockout. And that is going to be huge. He's going to tie the game up. And Colin's going to be on the back foot a little bit. He's going to have to find a way to recover from that. But it looks like, okay, yeah. I thought Scott was just going to X-Ball the active, but he decides to catcher out the Darkrai and go for it. I don't know if Colin plays a Mewtwo of his own. If he did, this would be a perfect time to just, energy switch and X-Ball for a knockout. But if he doesn't, he's just going to have to trade 2 knockouts with a Mewtwo. And, yeah, that's really all he's got. So, down goes that Darkrai. And at this point, I have to wonder... Well, I was going to wonder how many Prisms are left for Colin. How many energy switches are left. And basically just how much does he have left. If Scott can keep flipping heads on Super Scoop Up, he can win this game. He is going to win out this war. Just by healing, pretty much. He's going to trade 2 knockouts, but he won't actually get knocked out because he'll just keep picking up his Pokemon. So we shall see. We see an Ultra Ball for, looks like a Tornadus EX. Just going to thin his deck out a little bit. Interesting that he decided to discard his chair in there. He does have a Juniper in hand, but I don't think he wants to use that. He's got another Ho-Oh in there with a bunch of energy. So he's going for a Rebirth, and he gets heads. He might just retreat to Ho-Oh and just use Rainbow Burn for 80, threatening a knockout next turn. That is one way he could go about this. And here is Super Scoop Up, folks. And, oh, Tails, alright. I think if that's heads, Scott ends up making a comeback and winning this game. But with that Tails, I find it hard to believe that he's going to win this game. It just does not seem like it's going to happen. But at the same time, Colin doesn't have much in his hand. All he did last turn was attach a Prism and attack. So we could just see him get knocked out by this Mewtwo, and then he gets hit for a knockout by Rainbow Bird, and then who knows? If he doesn't have an energy to Night Spear. I don't know, guys. Maybe Scott could end up winning? Hard to tell. Especially with that fresh Tornadus EX down. I don't know. It's funny to see that Scott actually has 6 EX Pokemon in his field right now. Everything is an EX. You don't see that very often. Let's see. Colin, he's got a Skyla here. We'll see what he goes for. I would imagine he'll probably grab a Juniper. Does he have any left? He's going for an N. I don't know why he would grab an N instead of a Juniper if there's one in there. But yeah, he's going for an N. That's a very weird decision from Colin. Considering he's only going to get 2 cards from the N after he gets this knockout. He has another Prism in his hand. He puts down a Dark. So he does have one more Prism left to hit for a Shaman EX knockout, if need be. Tornadus EX comes up. Scott doesn't look like he has anything besides energy, and then a Juniper is his last card, and then a Switch as well. So this is going to be very, very, very close coming down to the wire here. I don't know who's going to win this game. If there are no more Super Scoop-Ups, I would imagine Colin wins. But if there are, Scott's going to win. It also depends on catcher for Colin. We could see a situation where Scott does retreat next turn after he takes a hit from the Darkrai, and then just attacks with Ho-Oh for Rainbow Burn. And actually, he's just going to do it this turn. He's going to switch into his Ho-Oh. Rainbow Burn for the finishing 80 damage. And we're going to go from there. This is a weird spot. Scott's going to count the number of cards left in his deck. He realizes, alright, I don't really want a Juniper. And yeah, it's going to be too difficult for me to call who's going to win this. It's very close. Both these guys are playing really well. And it's coming down to this, guys. Who is going to pull off this last knockout? And Colin Ultra Balls away a Prism, grabs his Shaman. Does he have another Prism left? That's a weird decision if he doesn't. You cannot energy switch your Prism energy off. Maybe that was a bit of a mistake. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, if he does not power up the Shaman, then obviously he loses. Oh, he does have the Prism in his hand. So he's got a weird decision. Does he put it down with the Prism? And if he does, he can end. But then it just comes down to Scott drawing a catcher and he loses the game. On the other hand, if he draws an energy switch off his end, he wins with a Revenge Blast immediately. So it's all going to come down to what Colin decides to do. I think he's just going to save the Shaman for kind of a last-ditch effort. Just say, you know what? If I don't draw a catcher next turn, I'll go for it. I'll go for the Shaman play. But, oh, and there's a Super Scoop-Up heads from Scott. Yeah, so Colin's just going to save the Shaman for a Hail Mary play. You know, if he draws an energy switch, he'll win the game. He just needs to get it off his end, that's all. This is such a close game. That Super Scoop-Up was huge. That takes away the catcher option for Colin to win the game. And now, honestly, it might come down to whether or not Scott gets a catcher. This is just all ridiculous. It's coming all down to whether or not these guys draw probably their last copies of whatever card they need. For Scott, it's going to be catcher. For Colin, it's going to be energy switch. And this is just a ridiculous game here in the finals. This is a great game. We do see another rebirth from Scott. He gets a heads. So he'll have that Ho-Oh as an option no matter what. And man, what is going to happen here? Both these guys, 2 prizes each. Just one more EX knockout wins the game. Scott, he has made quite a comeback here with those Super Scoop-Ups. That is just the power of that card. Obviously, that's all it takes. Just a heads here and there, and you can just save the game. Can Colin close this one out? We do see an energy switch. I'm not sure what Scott's doing with this. He could hit a situation where he gets enhanced hammered, and he could end up losing because of this energy switch. I don't really like this play at all from Scott. You know, if he flips tails on Power Blast and then gets hit by an enhanced hammer, he might not have anywhere to retreat to an attack. I don't like that energy switch. He's afraid of catcher, but your Mewtwo could just be catcher just as easily. I don't like that play at all, but doesn't matter. He does get the heads on Power Blast, and it's all going to come down to this. Colin does draw an enhanced hammer, so man, that Power Blast flip was huge. If Scott had gotten tails on that, it would have been just game over. And here we go. N. Does Colin draw his energy switch to win the game? If he doesn't, he'll have to retreat and wait. And then hope that Scott does not have a catcher. He'll need a catcher and an energy, actually. So this game is not over yet. It's really just all dependent on what these players draw off of this N for 2 cards. This is what the format comes down to quite frequently, but here is all it is. What do you draw off your 2 cards? And Colin, you're crossing your fingers saying, please give me the energy switch. Please give me the energy switch. Scott, you're just saying, don't give him the energy switch. Give me the catcher. And Scott gets the catcher. Oh, does Colin get the energy switch? There's a dark patch. And I don't think he has it. I think it's a game, folks. Scott does need an energy too, though. So this is not over. It's not over yet. We have an Eviolite going on to the Darkrai. And my goodness, guys, this game is close. Colin will retreat to Sableye. Junk Hunt, he's probably just going to grab 2 energy switches, honestly. That's all he needs to win the game is just 1 Revenge Blast, and he will win this game. He takes an energy switch and a catcher. Scott just needs to draw an energy, and there's the catcher. Plays the Super Scoop Up, heads here, and it's just game over. And tails, but he does have a Bianca for 6. Just 1 energy wins the game. He's got to draw it. There's way too many energy left. And he gets it. 1 energy. It had to be a different type, too, and he got it. That is going to be the game. Scott Lawler is your Greenwood, Indiana City champion in an exciting match, an exciting series. Well played by both guys, but in the end, Scott is just the one who comes out on top, barely edging out Colin. But great series no matter what, and this is just what makes Pokemon fun to watch. So congratulations to Scott. Just can't say anything else but great series, great win from him, congratulations. And congratulations to Colin on a great second place finish as well. Would have been great to go to a 3rd game, but we closed it out in 2. Can't ask for anything more exciting than that game. And a great way to close out this tournament. So thanks for watching, guys. I'm Pooka here from the Top Cut. We'll have more videos from some city championships coming up shortly, so stay tuned for those. But in the meantime, I'll see you guys next time, and take care.